Dan Rubenstein, we have a playoff field. Our field of 12 is now officially set. We know who won conference championship games on Saturday night. Now we know who is playing whom for the first ever expanded field of the 12-team college football playoff, my friend. Did you get any sleep last night? Or are you rearing and ready to go for this one here today?
I did okay, about 1 to 7 a.m.
Okay.
I've had worse. That's not bad. I'm ready to go, buddy. I'm rearing. I am excited. I have a lot of thoughts.
Hit follow, hit subscribe, wherever it is you get your podcast. We'd love to have you with us all throughout this playoff journey, this postseason journey. More to come on our bowl bingo game that I discussed a little bit on our live stream and podcast recording that we did last night. But without further ado, Mr. Rubenstein, we have breaking news.
About an hour and a half after Brett McMurphy did, yes.
We got to have McMurphy on this show at some point soon to find out how he scooped the playoff committee and found out who was getting in before we found out, before they announced, officially who was getting in. We have our up-to-date college football playoff rankings and bracket. Dan Rubenstein, for those watching on YouTube, it is up on the screen for those listening in the comfort of your home, in your car, at the gym, doing chores and laundry. Here is the way this thing shakes out. No great surprise that Oregon's going to be the number 1 overall seed. Georgia as the number 2. We've got Boise State as your number 3. We've got Arizona State as your number 4, capping a crazy conclusion to the season. Those are going to be the teams getting your first round buys. Beyond that, we've got Texas, your 5 overall. We've got Penn State as your 6 overall seed. We've got Notre Dame as your 7. We've got Ohio State as your 8. This is what it sets up then with regards to the first round matchup. Number 5, Texas hosting number 12, Clemson Tigers, who won their conference last night, 56-yard field goal.
That'll be Saturday, December 21st, 4 Eastern on TNT. Yeah.
Saturday at noon, it is going to be number 6, Penn State, hosting number 11, SMU. Friday night, 8 p.m. on ESPN, it's going to be Notre Dame hosting number 10, Indiana, the so-called state championship of the great state of Indiana.
Haven't played since the early 90s, I don't believe.
That's correct. And then that means we've got number 8, Ohio State, hosting number 9, Tennessee. That game is being played on Saturday night as well. So with all that being said, the winner of that Ohio State-Tennessee game plays Oregon. The winner of that Notre Dame-Indiana game plays Georgia. The winner of Penn State-SMU plays Boise State. The winner of Texas and Clemson squares off against Arizona State in the next round.
So those are all Jan 1 games except for the Fiesta on New Year's Eve.
That's correct. So what are the takeaways from this, Dan? We can talk through the matchups, but I think the big talking point is going to be that SMU made it in over Alabama. It was a very thin win for Clemson. Again, it was a 56-yard field goal in order to do it. And there was, I think, a fair amount of debate that continued on throughout the week in the build-up to that ACC title game. Certainly continued overnight. If you check the Twitter mentions, they were all there in our inbox as well. A lot of folks deliberating over whether or not it should be SMU that gets in, whether it should be Alabama that gets in. We both, I think, agreed on our recording that we did late last night that we'd be cool with it being SMU. We weren't sure if the committee would go in that direction, but at least on some level, they stayed consistent by not wanting to punish a team that made it into a conference championship game, right?
Right.
The counterpoint would be, well, SMU's schedule, their resume, what have you, was not as strong as an SEC team in Alabama. I understand that argument as well, but now having seen these matchups and what the committee decided to do, what are your thoughts?
I think they got it right. I understand it all. I don't take exception with much other than somehow Oregon getting the draw that they got, which is pretty brutal in terms of the defenses on their side of things, that they go undefeated and have the 8-9 game, which obviously they should, and the 12-5 game on the other side of their half. But it's just the narratives involved are pretty wild. That Georgia was out of SEC title game contention like 15 days ago. And here they are as the 2 seed SEC champion, possibly without their quarterback. ASU having a really impressive season, picked to finish last in the Big 12 and winning it. Boise State with a first-year coach, obviously a transcendent offensive star, getting a 3 seed, returning to the Fiesta Bowl. Like, you've heard of chock full of nuts, Ty. This is chock full of storylines, chock full of narratives. And so I definitely don't take exception to Alabama not being in. And like, this playoff doesn't need Miami. It doesn't need Ole Miss. I think it's great as it is, Ty.
I think it's a good mix of teams that are obvious blue bloods that you want to see play for the crown. I also think it's an intriguing mix of teams that don't normally have the opportunity, right? You mentioned ASU, that goes without saying. But what's been one of the other narratives that you and I have discussed here ad nauseum over the last couple months, teams that in the old system would have been shouldered out, but maybe now have an opportunity. Penn State's a good example of that. Tennessee's a good example of that. Tennessee, for a good chunk of the season here has flown under the radar with regard to the playoff conversation. They've just been sort of doing their thing with 2 losses, but Tennessee now finds their way into this playoff field. Indiana almost never gets a shot at this. Okay. Indiana's a Cinderella story, as is Arizona State. Incredible run for Arizona State. And it's nice to see Boise rewarded for a really good season. Just that one close loss earlier in the year against Oregon. The fact that they get a first round bye and get to play in the Fiesta Bowl, where, as you said, there's obviously a lot of Boise lore. That's a pretty cool story. So there's a nice mix, I think, across the board of intriguing storylines with blue bloods that we know a lot of our listeners at least cheer for and root on or root against. Right. That should hopefully make this thing interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, there's a good spread. Obviously, Notre Dame being as good as they are, that's going to muscle a conference team of some kind out. The Big 12 only gets 1 team in, but there wasn't a terribly convincing case for anybody else, especially with how Iowa State lost that game and the manner in which Colorado lost to Kansas late in the season. So, no, I think that's all correct. I think anybody planting an SEC flag here is pretty misguided. But no, I think everything you said is on point.
If you are any team in this tournament, any team at all in this tournament, as I flashed the bracket back up on the screen so you can see it.
Yeah.
Which pathway looks the easiest to you? Which team in this tournament, if you're picking one of them, not your own?
Right.
It certainly wouldn't be your own, because you could argue Oregon has one of the toughest roads through to the national championship. Of the teams you're looking at here, which one would you most want to be?
In this moment, I would say Georgia's probably pretty advantaged. Georgia or Penn, I'd say I'd rather be Georgia than Penn State, just because I'd rather play one fewer game if I'm any of these teams. So I want to buy. In terms of where these teams are, I think Georgia probably has, with a bye, and then Indiana, Notre Dame in the South, in Atlanta, in New Orleans, in the Sugar Bowl.
Sugar Bowl, yep.
And then the winner of Boise State and either SMU or Penn State in what I believe will be the Orange, I think is going to be the bottom half of that. Then I think, and the national championship is in ding ding Atlanta, Georgia.
Right.
That's a nice path for Georgia, with the asterisk of they haven't been all that consistently good this year, and they might be starting their backup quarterback, who looked fine yesterday against Texas when pressed into duty. So circumstantially, Georgia, I think, is in a good place. Internally, I think it's mixed. And then Penn State, I guess, would be the other one, based on my comments about Georgia, getting SMU at home, getting a Boise State team, neutral site, but I think Penn State is built to beat a team like Boise State pretty soundly.
Yeah.
And then getting either Notre Dame or Georgia in a semi, who are both good teams. Notre Dame can be very good, but they're not really tested. And Georgia just has been kind of sloppy this year, but has that skill of winning kind of down pat.
I would be thrilled to be a Texas fan right now.
Yeah, you get a big spread in Arizona State. Yeah.
I would much prefer to be on the other side of the bracket. The side of the bracket with Georgia and Boise State is the easiest road in. Whichever team you like the most or think has the easiest pathway into the national championship, it probably comes from that side of the bracket. But
right.
I gravitated immediately to Texas because Texas now, we've been eyeing up that 5 seed for a while, as you know, and that's maybe one of the flaws of the system, the fact that the 5 seed arguably has an easier road through than the 1 seed.
Yeah.
Texas is a huge favorite, a 2-touchdown favorite, 2-touchdown plus favorite at home against Clemson to start off their tournament. Then they square off against an Arizona State team. Arizona State, by the way, so it's a neutral site game, but Arizona State, despite the fact that they've been on a run, I just feel like Texas is a much more complete team. There's a reason that ASU was picked last in the Big 12. That doesn't mean anything. Now they won the conference. They had an incredible season, but Texas is a better team there. That feels like a glide path to me to get into the semifinals against a much tougher opponent. Right. At that point, you're looking at a team like an Oregon, a team like an Ohio State, a team like a Tennessee. But Texas to make it through the first 2 rounds, to me, feels like a near mortal lock. I think if you're a Penn State fan, you are absolutely thrilled with this draw. SMU coming north. SMU, we saw that you can move the ball on SMU. We saw that certainly you can pass on SMU yesterday. I really like Penn State's chances in that game. They're going to be about a 9.5 point favorite. And then to have Boise State in that next matchup in the Fiesta Bowl, Penn Staters will travel in mass to that game.
Definitely.
They will travel in mass to that game. It will be 80-20 in favor of Penn State. They would be a healthy favorite. I got to believe they like their chances of making it through to the semifinal. So for my money, the 2 toughest roads are for the 1 seed Oregon and the 2 seed Georgia, simply because the teams coming out of those first round matchups, in all likelihood, Notre Dame. There's a question about Ohio State or Tennessee. I think that's a great matchup. That's going to be the Saturday night matchup.
Yep.
Either one will be a tough match for Oregon.
Definitely.
So I'd much rather be coming out of that bottom half of the bracket, be on the 3 or the 4 line as opposed to the 1 or the 2.
Who do you think should be happier right now, Boise State or Arizona State?
I mean, I think I'd probably be happier if I were Boise State.
I would too.
I mean, you want to be seated as high as you can. That's sort of conventional logic, but I'm looking at this and I'm saying, well, get the week off and get the, in effect, a home game, right?
Yeah.
As home as you're going to get in the Fiesta Bowl, where you've already got so much lore. That's sort of a familiar setting for you, where you've already played your most famous game in the history of the program. I think that's an easy sell to get your fans down there. I don't think there are enough Boise fans to outnumber, say, a Penn State fan base, but I think Boise will travel well to that game, and that'll be an exciting matchup, potentially to get into a semifinal of the college football playoff.
I wonder what the calculus is going to be like for fans and paying for tickets for, you're going to hold out and assume a team is going to win and go like, wow, I think we're going to wait until Dallas if you are, an Ohio State fan or something like that. Do you think you can beat Oregon again? Or if you're a Texas fan, are you going to pay to go to the game in Austin, pay to go to the Peach Bowl in Atlanta? I wonder where the traveling is going to come from. A lot of these teams are going to bring fans no matter where they are. But I mean, I remember way back when in that first playoff, talking to Florida State fans or hearing from Florida State fans, like, we're not going to travel to the Rose Bowl because we'd rather travel to the national championship. Obviously, Florida State loses in that Rose Bowl, but there are going to be considerations here with travel and how often you're just going to go week to week traveling.
Right.
I think it's going to be fascinating.
It'll be fascinating for sure. What I think we're going to try to do out at verballers.com is, first and foremost, if you're going out there and sign up for our free tier, you can vote in our end of year poll to let us know where you come down on all of these teams, how you would rank your top 12. We could make an educated guess based on that, how your personal bracket would show up. We'd like to put that out there on our social feeds just because it's interesting. See how our people compare to what the committee did. You can sign up for the free tier and vote in that right now. In addition to that, we're going to be launching a game called Bowl Bingo. More details coming on that in a few days. It is going to be unlike any of the other games that we have done before, and I assure you that you have played before.
Yeah.
So that is in active development. We're very excited for some bowl bingo. It will be a weekly game as this postseason progresses. If you are interested in learning more about bowl bingo, again, if you go on out to verballers.com and just sign up for the free tier, it's going to be open to the public. Everybody can play this game. You don't have to be a paying member or anything like that, but you just do have to go to verballers.com and sign up for, at a minimum, the free tier, at which point we'll give you details as soon as they're available. But as I said, in active development and something I think we're very excited about.
Yes, absolutely. Can't wait.
This whole thing kicks off again on December the 20th with Notre Dame hosting Indiana. It will be the first ever playoff game on campus. It'll be the first ever playoff game for this expanded field. In the interim, there are going to be a bunch of bowl announcements that come out. We're going to talk about those perhaps on our next episode. We're still trying to figure out exactly what our schedule looks like this week, but a lot more news to come, not just with bowls, obviously transfer portal, obviously coaching news is always just around the corner. So a very active time right now in the early part of December. Dan Rubenstein, we will do our very best here to make sure that people are kept up to speed with all that's going on in and around the world of college football. But we have our field, man. We
have our field. By the way, all intertwined with what we saw last year with Malik Murphy, right? With the portal and making judgment calls about, like, I want to ride with this team that I'm currently on, but the portal is open and I want to get enrolled by, January, whatever. So am I going to be there for one game? I'm going to announce that I'm entering the portal, but I'm going to be there for one game, take my finals, play the opening round in Austin or whatever, and then hit the portal. Like, it's just all very fascinating that it's all sort of intertwined right now. The coaching carousel and, like, teams not hiring an offensive coordinator because the person that they have an agreement with is going to be coaching in the playoffs, so they can't actually have him around until January 2nd, January 12th, January 22nd. So it's all like a big buffet of madness.
It is a big buffet of madness, Dan. Why don't we leave it there? We have our playoff field. We will post the brackets in case anybody has yet to see them. We will drop this to the audio feed as soon as we possibly can. Stay tuned. A lot more to come. We will talk about this. We will preview this. We'll preview a bunch of bowl games. Keep it right here. Hit follow, hit subscribe for that guy over there, Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildenbrandt. As always, you know the drill. Thanks for supporting and stay solid.
Peace.